add some size, but without Victor Oladipo, and you're uncertain about him, you're talking about an all-star caliber player, a two-way player that can get you 22, 23 points a game, that's a lockdown defender. So it's going to be tough. But when I look at their free agents, I like Bogdanovich. They got to try to bring him back. You're talking about a guy who can defend his position, who can play the 2 and 3, who can knock down threes. So to me, he's the key. And then you're looking at Thaddeus Young. Will they have enough money to bring back a guy like him? Again, that hybrid 4, who, again, he's not a great three-point shooter. He's a great guy in the locker room. He can knock down the 3, but he's one of those guys that a coach loves because you don't have to manage him. All you have to do is just coach Thad, put him out there, tell him what to do, and he is a pro's pro. So it's going to be up in the air for Indiana. Nate McMillan has done an unbelievable job, he and Kevin Pritchard, but without your best player in the fold and you don't know when he's going to be back and how healthy he's going to be, everything is in flux right now.
Generally true in the NBA. Teams suffer without their best players on the front. Is that Canadian champagne? Is that
come on.
U.S. champagne? Is it?
It all tastes the same
Imported?
Going down, man. Don't matter.
Or poured on top of your head?
I guarantee you this, it was cheap champagne probably, because if I'm spilling it all over the room, it's not going to be no Moet or no Dome.
All this information is relevant and important, by the way, but obviously the most important question is the name you see in the middle of the screen there, Kawhi Leonard, and will he return? And what can the Raptors do in terms of their approach to the summer until they know what his answer is?
Nothing. You ever heard us saying the elephant in the room? Well, the claw in the room. Kawhi Leonard's decision. Look, everything rests among what his decision is going to be. And until Kawhi makes a decision, there's not much the Raptors can do. But if Kawhi comes back and talking to Masai, he really believes this team has a chance to be the Golden State Warriors of the East and have a 5 or 6 year run. Think about it. Kyle Lowry comes off the books after next year. That's $31 million. Then you have a guy like Pascal Siakam who you've developed that's going to be ready to move into that side. Fred VanVleet is ready to step into that Kyle spot. And then you look at their bench. You look at all the young players they have. This team is well constructed. Now, they do have to figure out what they're going to do with Marc Gasol. He's probably going to opt in. He has player option to opt in. And then if you can get him and add another year or two to West Point at a very cap-friendly number around $5 to $7 million a year, you can keep this nucleus together. And when you look at the Eastern Conference, other than Milwaukee, who is poised to beat them? Think about it. Other than the Milwaukee Bucks, the Toronto Raptors has the best player, maybe in basketball, best two-way player, and they have the deepest bench when you look at them. So this Raptors team is poised to go on a 3 to 5 year run if the claw will put down those hands in Toronto. And I think there's a good chance. What else can the Raptors do? Load management. He only played 60 games during the regular season.
Right.
His health was number one. And 2, they won the championship. So they've done everything possibly that they can do. And they're in position to offer Kawhi the most money. So it's all on Kawhi right now.
They've done their job. Remember, after falling behind 2-0 against the Bucks, they kind of exposed Milwaukee at the end of that series. And now, after a 60-win season that led the league, they're a little exposed financially here and in terms of the cap because of all those free agents you see there. And those are some awfully good and important players to Milwaukee.
Well, this is what happens when you build a great team. Now you got to try to figure out how to keep it. And that really starts with Brook Lopez. Last summer, one of the best signings, signed him for just over $3 million, but he's a non-bird free agent, which means they can only offer him 120% on that $3 million number, or they have to renounce him, create room elsewhere, and then use their cap room to re-sign him. And that's why you saw on draft night, they made that trade with Detroit to move the 30th pick, right? They traded Tony Snell for John Lure, and now they may do something with John Lure to create even more money, maybe even like a wave and stretch scenario that can take them to almost $13 million in room to $19 million in room. So this is financial engineering at its absolute best with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Short answer here. Could they theoretically sign all the important core pieces?
Probably not Mirotic unless they wave and stretch John Lure, and then they have $19 million to split amongst Brook Lopez and Mirotic. But that probably doesn't get it done based upon what we expect the market to be this July.
I'm getting a headache. There's a lot of
this is fun. Come on, let's keep going.
Involved with Milwaukee and the Caps.
I'm just nodding like I know what he's
You
talking
can tell Boy Wonder over there.
Absolutely.
Baby Genius, Baby Genius is loving this.
What these guys do.
This is fun.
Crunch the numbers. All right, to Philadelphia now. And the 76ers, despite a good season, and maybe they beat the Raptors if those bounces don't go Kawhi's way. They're barely a team right now because they don't have very many people under contract. Lots of questions in Philly.
Well, lots of questions, but one thing they don't lack are people who want to score, people who want to shoot, especially if Jimmy Butler comes back. So in that respect, I think it's a smart pick for them to choose Matisse Thybulle. He was the best defender in college basketball last season, a terrific athlete, and I think that he'll move well with Joel Embiid and company. And look, the thing about Thybulle is he played in the 2-3 zone, so there's some question about, is his defense really going to translate to the NBA? Syracuse guys, Mike Hopkins was a former Syracuse assistant. They played that Syracuse 2-3 zone. Those kind of guys kind of get labeled in terms of the NBA. I do think at some point Thybulle is going to have to establish an offensive game if he's going to stick in the NBA. There aren't a lot of people playing for a long time, making a lot of money in the NBA purely as perimeter defenders. So he's going to have to add an offensive game.
Well, they've got a lot of questions to answer there as well in terms of free agents, who's staying, who's going, who will be on the roster next season. We continue. Moving on, we'll get to the 5-time Western Conference champs in just a moment. The Warriors coming up in the next segment. Right now, the Brooklyn Nets, who have been building this culture along the way. They've established themselves as the kind of team that players, notably high-profile free agents, may want to join. There's the cap situation right now. They did not have a first-round pick because they traded it away. What's the summer look like for them?
This is similar to Milwaukee, but in a different way. They're just creating more cap room, trying to find that magic number for them is about $70.5 million. That'll fit a 10 years of service, i.e. Kevin Durant, max player, and a 7 to 9 years of service, max player in Kyrie Irving. So what we've seen them do is they've renounced or did not offer Rondé Hollis Jefferson a qualifying offer, so now he's an unrestricted free agent. They have the 17th pick in the draft. They attach with Alan Crabb's $18.5 million contract, move it to Atlanta to create more cap room in that scenario, and then they have another pick later in the draft that they moved on to the Clippers to create even more room. So they're at about $68.5 million of room, about $1.2 million away from having the absolute maximum needed to sign two max players. All they got to do is move Zadon Musa, and they're there.
Just based on buzz around the league, is Kyrie or another A-lister coming to Brooklyn?
Well, it's amazing how much talk there is right now that it is a done deal that Kyrie Irving is going to Brooklyn. But the player we haven't talked about is all-star that they have at the point guard in D'Angelo Russell. So it's interesting because he has a $21 million cap hold. So if for some reason Kyrie goes elsewhere, they can still hold D'Angelo all the way through the moratorium. And everyone talks about these offer sheets, which is important, right? Some team can put a big number on D'Angelo Russell. But as long as Brooklyn holds his cap hold, that clock doesn't start until July 6th, which gives Brooklyn till July 8th, basically to find out what Kyrie and the other free agents are going to do before they make a decision with D'Angelo Russell.
And
so
match
Brooklyn,
or not match.
Match or not match. And so Brooklyn's in fantastic position. Sean Marks, masterful job of putting himself in this position.
They've done a phenomenal job of building that whole thing in terms of culture, in terms of roster, and of course the cap implications as well. All right, easy to solve, of course. 5 straight Western Conference titles and trips to the finals. Catastrophic season-ending injuries to 2 guys who are max-type free agents. You couldn't have scripted this any worse for Golden State. So what now?
Yeah, it's bad for Golden State. Look, they're going to have to do something, probably max out Durant and Klay Thompson. Both of those guys got injured during their watch. And second, so what do you do? If I'm Golden State, how much do you play Steph Curry next year? Do you grind him and wear him out? Obviously, he's got to play, but how do you build a team when arguably the first best two-way player, Kevin Durant, is probably going to miss the season, and who knows how long Klay Thompson's going to be out. I think the Golden State Warriors got to do the right thing for those 2 guys, and then they got to try to, if I'm Golden State with Durant and Klay Thompson probably missing the season, I'm going to focus on building my bench and the players around them, so when they do come back, I'm going to have a healthy Steph, hopefully Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Durant. But the reason the Warriors, to me, couldn't beat the Raptors, they had no depth. And that's what happens, Wes, and you know this. When you have a championship team and you have to start paying everybody, what suffers is your depth. And what killed them this year, they didn't have any bench to go to. So if I'm the Warriors, I'm going to focus on building my bench, let these young guys play and develop, and then hopefully Durant and Klay Thompson come back the following year and be ready to start back where they left off.
Well, the bench was a question all season long, and then they got to the finals, and with the injuries, they just didn't have many bodies to go to against the Raptors. Well, this could create an opportunity for somebody else in the Western Conference. Maybe that somebody's the Portland Trailblazers, guys. They reached the Western Conference Finals last year. Nasir Little was their pick on draft night with the 25th overall pick. What's the outlook for tweaking that roster moving forward?
Well, not going to be a whole lot of changes, obviously. I mean, they have one of the great backcourts in the NBA, and Lillard and McCollum. And, Nasir Little was an interesting story on draft night. Here's a guy who came out of high school as a consensus top 5 recruit and had kind of an iffy year at North Carolina, just didn't have a lot of offensive polish. He's very physically talented. I mean, he is an NBA athlete right now. So if he dedicates himself on the defensive end of being a complementary player to those guys, then I think that he'll fit in well. But I think it's going to take him some time to develop his offensive game. I would not expect Nasir Little to be an impact player as a rookie. There's a reason why he slid down as far as he did.
It'll be interesting to see if the Blazers can hang on to some of the depth they acquired during the season, Cantor and Hood and the rest. And, of course, Yusuf Nurkic will come back at some point from that horrific injury in April. The Rockets went